After 35 years in law enforcement, it was an easy decision for me to make to award hazard pay, not as a benefit, but as a temporary recognition for the hazards that corrections officers and sheriff deputies face. And yet now the sheriff and some staff make this an easy decision for me to reverse. This was done, again, out of concern for safety and protection of our county employees in situations likely to expose them to COVID-19. Since that time, I've had two deputies actually tell me, keep your money, just give us time off, which I found to be very ungrateful, but also I'm not in a position to negotiate with a contract or a union benefit. This was back in March and April, but I let it go. With the recent outbreak in the jail and learning that corrections officers, many of them weren't wearing masks, nor inmates, against the public health officer's directive, against L&I mandate, against the governor's order, against corrections officers contracted COVID, no protection while receiving hazard pay. And so they're receiving hazard pay, but not taking due caution and protections, and not trying to mitigate the danger. To me, seems rather silly on my part to award that or approve it. I heard a CO while on isolation and quarantine wanted hazard pay to continue. Thurston County Sheriff is charged with serving civil orders. He has a department for civil service as well. And these orders, legal process, are only issued when there's a threat to public health and public safety that cannot be resolved through voluntary compliance. RCW 43.20.050 states all sheriffs and others shall enforce all rules adopted by the State Board of Health, and the WAC Rule 246.100.070 states an order issued by a local health officer shall constitute the duly authorized and lawful rules adopted by the State Board of Health and must be enforced. In a June letter, and again, I was just privy to this last week, in a June letter to the public health officer, the sheriff wrote in response for a quarantine order service, a civil service, due to the impact it would have on our limited staff, we are unable to assist. And again, I quote, I understand and appreciate your responsibilities in this area, and I would be happy to discuss alternatives that do not lead to direct exposure of our staff in serving a civil quarantine order. That's the same staff receiving hazard pay who may or may not be masked up. The Thurston County Health Officer had a civilian serve the quarantine order, the civil order, in rural Thurston County. An untrained, no protective gear, no tools, radio communication, but an individual civilian with serving a civil quarantine order on an individual who perhaps has a criminal background, because it may be too dangerous for a sheriff's deputy to do it due to exposure of COVID. Yet in the sheriff's letter refusing to serve civil orders, he said having to quarantine deputies due to exposure decreases the number of deputies able to respond to civil unrest in the cities. At such events as civil unrest, they're exposed to far more than just COVID-19, yet they respond. And I appreciate their response. I think it's the appropriate thing to do. But all offices and departments in the county are trying to work together in these, as has been stated ad nauseum, unprecedented times to navigate our way through this. So I find this insulting rather, and non-productive. And in an effort to take appropriate action to protect public health and safety, there's an August 19th, 2020, Thurston County Health Officer needs to again mandate the Sheriff's Office to adhere to 20 requirements to ensure the public health and safety of staff and inmates. And the very first one is mask up. and mandates social distancing when possible, and yet that hadn't been taking place. And this flies in the face of common sense to continue hazard pay. Money is not going to protect one from COVID-19 exposure alone. The hazard pay was an effort to recognize inherent dangers of exposure, yet the hazard pay didn't serve that purpose apparently. So with those things, my decision is to discontinue the hazard pay.